Welcome into this episode of the Piplline Podcast brought to you by OilFire Whiskey. I'm Zack Reynolds, joined alongside by Luke Hamilton. We've got a little bit of a different episode style for you guys. Is 11 games in through the season. And I thought we'd do a little bit of a recap just around the 10 games. Obviously, we couldn't just go directly after the 10th game on Saturday night. So here we are this week looking ahead and looking back at the same time. But it's been a very up and down season. It seems so far, Luke, and just a shade under 500 at times. It's been a shade over 500. A couple of big wins, and then of course some big losses as well. It's been a very difficult season to kind of get a feel for, I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's a gauge that you want to sort of find early in the season so you can see some accuracy and, hey, how's our team looking here, through the first 11 games. Now, I don't think we have that gauge dialed in all the way yet, right? I mean, there's a lot of storylines early in a season, as in 11 games, that you might not have expected to occur so quickly. A heavy slate against teams like Wichita, a heavy slate against teams like Kansas City here early on, and then our first taste to look at Rapid City over this past week, and of course just one game on opening night against the Allen Americans. Thankfully, it's a sport right now where you get some points for overtime losses, right? And this team is 0-3 in overtime this year, and those wins will come. The fruition will eventually happen, but a 3-5-3 record right now. You look at that and you think, oh, we're 3-8, right? But you're really close, a lot closer to 500 than you would think. Just 2 games back, in fact, 2 regulation wins or overtime wins away from being a 500 team again. And that can occur here this week. We look at the first 11 games. Opening night, the team came out hot, and they looked like a really, really good structured team. And I think you're going to expect that out of a team on home ice to start. Because the very next day, we saw Kansas City in their home opener come out really strong against the Oilers, and all of a sudden Tulsa was 1-1.
Yeah, it was quick, and that kind of harkens back to the fact that it's been difficult to see the consistency or the same team on multiple nights. Of course, we haven't seen the team find the win column in back-to-back games yet either, and that's something that it can happen quite a bit early in the season, but I think typically would have seen one or two little streaks here and there. But I think the other way you look at it is you're not getting these regulation streaks with the losses either. Grabbing points when there are back-to-back losses, and there's small differences obviously in an overtime game, a 1-goal game in general, and I think that kind of bodes well for the future, and we see a very different team, personnel-wise especially, since we even saw on opening night, and that's kind of maybe something you don't see at this point through 11 games, but J.C. Campagna suspended by the team this week. He's going overseas. We talked about Jack DeRemus going overseas as well. He being suspended by the team, so both of their rights are retained. But they're no longer with the team, and those are 2 names when you looked in the summer coming in. They looked big time names. Of course, Jack DeRemus wasn't producing probably at the level that he was the year before, and J.C. Campagna really struggled with the consistency as well. But when you see that in the summer, like I said, those look like 2 guys that you would be expecting to both eclipse that 20-goal mark, and by game 11, they're both gone.
Yeah, I think so. And one important thing about the early stages of a season is you're trying to find that identity, right? You have an idea in training camp, with head coach Rob Murray of how he's going to want to structure his team, but you got to figure out if you've got the personnel to do so. And I think it was a bit of a concern for Coach Murray, with those 2 young men going overseas, that maybe they weren't guys that unfortunately were 100% committed to that locker room because of their decision to go overseas. And now you've got that in your locker room now. You play Wichita so many times early in the season. That trip out there to Kansas, it can become mundane sometimes. You can get into a quick lull, but this is a bit of a wake-up call here that every game matters early in the year, especially against the Thunder. Coming up, we see 4 straight games against them here in the week of Thanksgiving and leading into the next, and you don't have time to waste. And so when we saw the transition from the roster, from the way that it was before Rapid City's series and to the way that it is now, it's sort of a turning point. It's a moment that you can sort of put a bookmark in the season and say, hey, we've got a new team now to an extent, and we've got to find a way to produce with it. You look at some of the top producers here through the first 10 games and now 11 games for the Oilers. Eddie Matsushima's had a great season here so far. He's got 12 points, 8 goals, and 4 assists. He's over a point per game type of player, and he's third on the team in shots produced just as well. You've got to like the way that a player like him is playing, and he's going to make guys around him better. Of course, Evan Weinger, right behind him with 11 points on the year, but he's been recalled back up to San Diego. Going to have to ask other guys around him to maybe pick it up a bit. I see guys like Jackson Leaf, Max Golod to continue their pressure in the point column and try to help out.
Yeah, certainly you got to find goals throughout the lineup. And, Eddie Matsushima, he's been great. He has 8 goals on the year, right? And you look at the share that he has of the total goals, it's been fantastic. And he started slow in the first couple of games, too. I mean, those 8 goals have all come in the last 9 games. And with that, you see his ability to be consistent with scoring goals, because it's not like he, had a couple of hat tricks and has been completely off the radar. Other than that, I mean, there's been games where he's been the only goal scorer for the team, and there's been essentially games where he's just scored 1, then the next night he scored 1, maybe missed one night, then he had 2. Right? It's very consistent, and I think a big part of that is he seems to be finding himself in a confident state of mind, which he should be, obviously, with how he's playing. And I think his shot has really improved from distance, especially his release and his ability to kind of protect the puck when he's coming out of the corner, where last year he might have lost it a couple of times. Or would be forced to really kind of dance the goalie to score in tight. Now, with the shot and his release, I feel like he has the ability to really score goals from anywhere within the zone.
Yeah, I think so. He's such an important piece to this team right now. He's played in every single game this year, and you look at the roster right now, just a little under 43% of the active roster you see on any given night for the Oilers has played in all the games. So, you're looking at a team that, of course, you've had some healthy scratch situations with guys trying to earn spots in the lineup. But Eddie Matsushima is a part of that core that's played all 11 games here so far this year. 22% of those players that have played every game this year are also rookies. You dial in on a couple of those here right now. Michael Farron and Andrew Jarvis being the 2 rookies right now that are a part of that lineup each and every night. And I think Jarvis has brought not only an ability to produce points on the power play, which is great to see, but he's got 6 assists overall in the season. He's helped out offensively, and he's been responsible defensively just as well. I think one thing that maybe the average fan doesn't notice, but we've had an opportunity to see, is to just be around Andrew Jarvis and the type of passion he has in that locker room. He takes individual responsibility for the team effort at the end of the day, and I think that's something that the Oilers are going to be able to utilize a lot, is his leadership ability in that locker room. He's going to make sure he's the first person to keep himself in check, and that's what you want to see out of a rookie, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Michael Farron as well. I don't think I've seen anybody here that's a rookie in a while that's got as good of hands as he has. And I think just finding a way to utilize those more effectively will come. But he's getting a chance each and every night in the lineup to do so. Yeah,
certainly. He reminds me of a player we used to have in Darcy Murphy, who ended up going overseas and having a really good European career in just the terms where the way he plays and his ability, especially his kind of straight line speed, pushes himself wide. He's got really nice hands as well, and as I think the season will go on, we'll probably see his ability to shoot in kind of contested and tight spaces probably improve because he's coming over from Europe where you have more space to shoot. just by the law of the size of the ice. But you look up and down the lineup, there's a lot of guys that have been impressive, and you mentioned one in Jarvis, and a guy that played with him last year now, and in Tyler Polson. I've been really happy with both of those players. They're both guys that are small but play far bigger than their size indicates. They're kind of the definition of dog in the fight. Not the size of the size of the fight in the dog, right. Not the dog in the fight.
There you go.
But that's kind of how they operate. And you see Tyler Polson. I mean, there's been plenty of times where he could stay down in games, and he's popped right back up. He's gotten into a couple of big hits, and now he's finding a really productive pace here as of late. He's got 3 points in his last 4 games. He's doing well on the power play, of course, and as well, he's a guy that really keeps his feet moving all the time, and I think he's a guy that can kind of be a change of pace if a game's slowed up and gotten a bit mundane. He can kind of charge through that neutral zone and bring the game to the other team.
Yeah, and I think, somebody we even forgot is Adam Samuelson, just as a rookie as well. He's played in all 11 games this year, and, you're going to need a structured defense here coming up. It's no secret right now the Oilers are struggling to keep the puck out of the net, and, that's one, of course, on the netminders finding a way to have a more consistent effort, but also, the players in front. And that's where you're going to have that chemistry between your defenseman and your netminder, and forwards have to be involved in that process too. You have to be committed to both sides of the puck, and I think the Oilers are just getting closer to finding that. A 9-1 loss on Saturday, well, the response on Sunday was great. Mm-hmm. You go down 3-0, that's 11 straight goals in the back of the net for Rapid City on the weekend, and Tulsa didn't fold like a cheap chair to an extent after that. They found a way to tie the game up. Important goals from important players, right? Eddie Matsushima ended up tying up the game. You had Jackson Leaf get this team on the board early in the third period. He hadn't had a goal in a while, right. But you saw just how happy Jimmy Soper was for Leaf on the ice during that game. He recognized and knew just how important that goal was for Jackson Leaf to help the team out. And, of course, just getting everything back on track for Dylan Sadoway coming off of an injury last year. Huge goal to get us started on the 5-on-3. You're looking at those guys I mentioned there, Sadoway, Leaf, even Soper in that conversation, and Matsushima. Fans know who those guys are based on the efforts they had last year, and I look for that group right there to be a big part of the core to help this team out. We look forward ahead. The Mountain Division, sitting at the bottom of it right now, but a couple of games on a weekend can change the whole course of the division, it seems, and it's not necessarily like what we're seeing in the North Division, where it's almost getting really separated very, very quickly.
Yeah, 2 teams
it's
running away from everybody else.
It just takes a week, maybe, and this has to be, I think, that week for the Oilers. It's Thanksgiving. It's easy to be distracted in a week like this, but you've got the same opponent, and you just have to focus on them to get a chance to win some games here. I think just finishing a 60-minute game right now is going to be important for head coach Rob Murray and his team. Get a 2-3 goal win if you can. Like we saw at home not long ago on November 5th against the Thunder, a 4-1 victory at home. It might have been the Oilers' best game they've played in a while. But you just can't have any of those collapses like we saw this weekend. I think Colton Ellis is a netminder that has a lot of potential and certainly has pride for himself in the way that he plays his game. And he had a much better game after the 9-1 loss. We'll see, but these guys are ready and amped up to get going again after that series this weekend.
Yeah, you have to think that they have a drive to get back and to really compete here against Wichita with these 4 games. And you mentioned, Colton Ellis, he's had some really strong performances so far. And that game just really wasn't one for him on Saturday. But, in that same vein, I would challenge anybody listening, have you had a bad day at work before? When you've had one,
right.
When you've had one, it's not in front of a few thousand people watching you. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
So it's something to look at in the regard of as a goaltender. He's had a great junior career. There's a reason why he was a 3rd-round pick, St. Louis' 2nd pick of the draft, as they didn't have a 1st-round pick. There's a reason why he's there, and he's looked really good. And he's kind of one of the newer faces, and there's some new faces coming in, and some new faces that becoming familiar after a few games that are probably going to improve and gel as things move on. And you look at Cameron Saprika, of course, as a player. He has been very good since joining the team. And Lindgren coming in soon will be a nice boost as well. But you see Alex Gilmore's out of the lineup still with an injury. So there's lots of pieces that are still kind of falling into place, guys that are improving. We haven't seen much of Logan Nyhoff yet either. He's an affiliated player. Yes, you lose Weinger, but you did get somebody in return, which is a huge boost. I know he doesn't have the same offensive numbers overall throughout his career that Weinger maybe did, but that doesn't mean that they're non-comparable players. And of course, the same thing can be said with Hilderman. He's still down in San Diego, or up in San Diego, I should say, and he's played 6 games there. He's only played 3 here. And I know that he was getting some pretty consistent ice time early on, maybe a little bit less here as of late. And we were both really thrilled with his ability when he was here for those 3 games. So that would be another massive boost to have him and Saprika and McKee back, which we did not have on the opening weekend. Any one of those 3 defensemen, that's a really strong group of 3.
Yeah, I think the roster we've seen so far has been shown in segments, but really not all together, like you mentioned. And Logan Nyhoff gets his first pro point, this weekend, and that goes a long way for anybody, for sure. Maybe that's just what he needed. Get the monkey off your back, play some loose hockey. And Logan Nyhoff, he had great numbers in the faceoff dot in the WHL. Of course, he's got to translate that a little bit more here to the pro level, and that's going to take some time. It goes from honestly playing against boys and then playing against men, and there's a big difference there for sure. Logan Nyhoff, I thought he held himself well in that second game on Sunday here so far in an Oilers uniform. You get a chance to take a deep breath if you're Tulsa, and you get a chance to play Wichita for 4 straight. You'll have your Thanksgiving week certainly filled with the Wichita Thunder for those listening. So.
Yeah, definitely. And going kind of back with Nyhoff for a little bit is, you mentioned that you're playing against boys and not against men. There's some very, very, very talented individuals out there in the WHL, but the best player in the league was on his team, and Connor Bedard, who is undoubtedly going to be the number 1 overall pick this year. It may end up breaking just about every single major junior record before it's all said and done. But, Nyhoff's played with great players around him before. Of course, like I mentioned, Bedard, but he's been up in San Diego and played in 8 games this year, had 3 games the year before at the end of the campaign. So he's a guy that I think is still probably getting his feet wet at the pro level, and it'll be exciting to see what comes of him in the future.
Yeah, I think so. It all comes together at some point, right? But there's no time to waste, and head coach Rob Murray knows that, and he's looking to get his team back on track with the consistent winning ways. Like you said, 2 wins in a row is what we're looking for just to start, if we can. But it starts with that first win in a row again, and the opportunity is going to be tomorrow against Wichita at 7:05 on the road.
Absolutely, at the little Thanksgiving Eve, and then of course coming back here to the BOK Center, Black Friday. It's been a very busy week. Got the Saturday, the Sunday as well, so it'll be another 4-game slate, just like it was this last week, and with that, it should be a bit of a doozy, but we're excited for everything that'll be coming up. Like I mentioned, the Black Friday game should be a big game on that Friday, and we'll see everybody out there, of course, and then we'll start getting into the month of December and closing out on 2022.
Yeah, no doubt. December is going to be a fun month, too. Make sure you check the schedule for some of those unique opponents. We've got Indy in town. Jacksonville will be in town in December. Do not miss those games. You're not going to want to. Jacksonville and Tulsa, they've never seen each other. Yeah. And this is going to be some hockey history, again, like we saw with Newfoundland and Orlando last year. So make sure you're a part of those, and we'll be able to see you guys here real soon. Yeah,
absolutely. We should have seen them during the COVID year, Jacksonville, but the schedule got shifted around, so that'll be very exciting, of course, coming up next month. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this recap episode of the Piplline Podcast, brought to you by OilFire Whiskey. We'll have some more podcasts coming out throughout the year, and we'll try and keep you guys updated with something similar to this in each 10-game segment or so. So have a great one, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.